I'm going to do a pre-sermon sermon. I came across a meme a few years ago, and it said, Happy Siblings Day, and it showed a picture of the sons of Jacob lowering Joseph into the pit. I thought that was very funny. Once again, the Bible is not always an exemplar of the best things to do. It often tells us stories of people behaving in ways that are pretty terrible. But that being said, I like the fact that God does not abandon Joseph. In fact, Joseph turns out to save his brothers from famine and death. I love the irony and the foreshadowing. But also, if you're the youngest brother, don't be a spoiled brat and don't be a tattletale. And also, dads, moms, try not to play favorites with your kids. Not that any of you have that problem. It's just an interesting thing that this is sort of a cautionary tale of bad family dynamics. I digress. Speaking of people who speak first and think later, Peter. Not that Peter, the Peter of the Bible.
Guilty as charged.
Fair enough. This is a fun little story. So first of all, I like the fact that Jesus is not afraid to say, hey guys, you know what? I need a break from everybody. I imagine Jesus was probably an introvert, even though he was doing all this stuff. It's like, you guys go on ahead to the other side. We've got some work to do over there, but I need to go hide. I need to go pray on the mountaintop. Those of you who, like myself, are extroverts, that tends to seem like a weird thing. Well, Jesus, can we come with you? No. Leave me alone. I need a break. And so he goes up and prays. Well, of course, Jesus would never send his disciples into a storm, would he? No, yes. So while he's up there praying, a storm blows up on the lake. Now, as far as I understand, the Sea of Galilee isn't a sea necessarily, but it is a pretty big lake, hence being called the Sea of Galilee. And enough wind and waves come up and you're in a small dinghy, you're not going to be very happy on that water, especially if you've got, a deep distance below you, especially if you're not really good at swimming. So Jesus, done with his recharge, done with his prayer time, comes down off the mountain and walks across the water. Well, isn't that convenient? Yeah. He's sending the disciples into a storm and you walk across the water? Thanks, guy. But in true Jesus fashion, he's got them okay. It's not that big a deal. And they're like, oh my gosh, it's a ghost! Because, let's face it. If you're on the bay and suddenly you see someone walking across the water in the middle of the night during a storm, you're not going to be, oh, it's Jesus. Isn't this wonderful? It's like, what is going on? But I like it. He said, fear not, it is I. Do not be afraid. It reminds me of the show Allo Allo, where it's like, it is I, Leclerc. If you haven't seen it, it's very funny. Anyway. But he said, it's me. Guys, it's me. Calm down. I got you. One of my favorite moments of Peter speaking first, thinking later. He's like, if it really is you, command me to come out on the water. Now, if you're worried that it's a ghost and you're not sure that it's really Jesus, are you going to put that apparition to a test? I would not do that. I would not risk my life and limb to say, prove to me that you're you by commanding me to come out and do this amazing thing you're doing, which could end up in my death. Bless his heart, Peter goes, I'm going to try that out. And Jesus says, all right, come on. And what does he do? Walks right on the water, walking along like it's nothing. All right, cool. This is amazing. And then suddenly he realizes, wait, what am I doing? Ah! And falls into the water. Like, save me, Jesus. He's like, oh, here, gotcha. Oh, you have a little faith. Why did you doubt? Now, as a kid, I tried to walk on water to see if it was possible. I was also the kid that tried to use the Force when I was in elementary school because I was a huge fan of Star Wars. Needless to say, it didn't work out so well. I got about one step before I sunk in the water because I was running into the water instead of walking across it. But, I'm going to try things out. So I'm not entirely sure that literally Jesus was walking on the water, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. That just means I'm not sure of that, and the likelihood is probably not. But what the story is teaching us is less about the miraculous ability to transcend the laws of physics, which is neat, but it doesn't really do much other than having control over the elements, which demonstrates Jesus' divinity, but more about what Jesus and Paul were embarking on, or Jesus and Peter were embarking on in this exchange. Peter was willing to take a risk, even if sometimes his risks were more boneheaded than others. This one less so. I think this was actually one of his better, more courageous moments. Because you notice none of the other disciples got out of the boat. Although I gotta admit, raise your hand if you had done what Peter did in that situation. Raise your hand if you did what the other 11 disciples did in that situation. You would not be wrong to do that. That is a wise, practical move. But he gets to experience that miraculous ability until he forgets. Until he forgets. Now, you see Jesus walking on the water. He tells you to come out there. You do it. You're walking on the water. Why would you suddenly get afraid? Well, you forget. You forget the incredible, miraculous things that were done for you in that moment. Thursday at the Masonic Homes, the reading was about the people of Israel kvetching to Moses and missing the point and being given water because they had forgotten. I often think, you cross through the Red Sea on dry land and watch the entire army of Pharaoh drown by that same Red Sea, and you doubt that God can provide for you? What is wrong with you? But then I thought about it. Raise your hand if you've ever gotten cranky or upset or irritable when you're hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, especially when you've been out in the desert all day long. Now imagine 40 years. Who here is going to be kvetching? I know I am. But the problem is, once again, they forget. And that's the hard part about this whole thing about taking risks to follow where God is trying to lead us. God doesn't make it easy for us. If it were easy for us, it would not be a communal effort. It would not be a faith journey. It would not be something that grows us and transforms us into the fullness of who God has for us. So Peter gets to experience that for a minute and then falls into the water because he forgets. Does God abandon him? No. Immediately, Jesus grabs his hand and says, I got you. But really? Come on, Peter. Why did you doubt? You were literally doing the thing. And they get back into the boat and they work together and everyone recognizes as soon as, and of course, Jesus, how convenient, as soon as he gets in the boat, whoosh, it's kind of like a summer thunderstorm on the lake in Georgia. Am I right, Dad? 1 minute it's crazy weather, and then 5 seconds later, or in Florida, the front yard is sunny and clear, nothing. Backyard it's torrential downpour and a possible tornado. It's just the way it is. But Jesus gets in the boat and whoosh, everything's fine. This life, this journey, this communal family that we are embarking on is never easy. It is never easy. Especially in a world where religion is often at best viewed with suspicion for very good reason. And the church in particular has had to weather grotesque abuses of its power, of its trust, of its spirituality. And we are having a harder and harder time getting people to understand that there's more to Christianity, more to Jesus, more to church than the headlines you see in the news. But again, following Jesus and being a Christian are two very different things. But following Jesus means we are stepping out into that tumultuous water. We are choosing to trust that this direction, this invitation we're being led to, is going to be something that we can do in spite of what seems to be impossible. That's one of the challenges that we face, particularly in a small but mighty congregation. So, in many ways, it's good to check in every once in a while, and I find it also humorous because the last couple of weeks I have been like beyond exhausted. So my big picture radar is kind of, as opposed to I'm like, I don't know. I have not been able to keep the big picture in mind as well as I would like. Obviously, I can't even do analogies very well right now. But the question that keeps coming up is, what is the big picture that we need to make sure we are keeping in mind? What is the invitation that we're being brought on that we need to trust in spite of the winds, the waves, the fact that Peter potentially, I don't know if he could swim or not. He was a fisherman, so I would hope so, but we don't know so. Also, it's good to learn how to swim if you're a fisherman. But ultimately, we have to keep a very, very big picture in view in a very small microcosmic place. So as we step into what's going to be the start of our program year in less than a month, what is the big picture that Jesus is inviting us out into? That, like Peter, it's like, if it's really you, command me to come out there and I'll do it. And he says, come on out. What are the things that we're being led into that seem like they should not work, but if we do them, they will? Things that we cannot lose sight of the calling to which we are called, even when the wind and waves and things that should terrify us want to terrify us. How do we hold strong to that courage, that trust, that willingness to take that risk further and further, so that instead of falling into the sea, we begin to walk on that water and we make it all the way to the other side, where, curiously enough, in the next section of the reading, a Gennesaret Gentile is filled with an entire legion of demons. We're not going to do demon warfare necessarily, but big things. So may we, especially when we feel despondent, when we feel frustrated, when we feel afraid, or when we feel exhausted, remember what our big picture is, and remember to take care of ourselves, like Jesus did, and to not lose sight of that calling, that courage, as Peter did, and see where Jesus is leading us, and see where that storm goes by trusting. Amen.